Hello everyone, before I start my speech, I'm going to show my audience real quick. So I got my parents in the back right here. And then I have about 4 people on call. So I should be all good. A nuclear reactor is infinitely safer than eating because 300 people die every year from choking on food. Dixie Lee Ray. The purpose of my speech today is to inform you guys about nuclear power and why it's such an important option in today's world through both its safety and efficiency. Over the past few years, I have been doing a lot of research on this subject. My interest in this kind of started in high school chemistry my sophomore year. And I've covered topics like nuclear fission, which is the splitting of the atom. I've covered general nuclear efficiency. And along with this, I've also covered books from people who develop nuclear power. Now, I don't consider myself an expert by any means, but I do believe that I at least know enough about the subject to inform you guys on it. The topic of energy is I would say it's a pretty hot topic nowadays because there's so many energy sources that have so many pros and cons to what they do. For example, we have oil and gas where it causes a lot of pollution, but is very abundant. We have alternative and renewable sources such as solar, wind, and hydro, which are decent in producing energy, but don't produce enough for our needs. And then we have the subject of climate change and global warming, where right now we are finding ourselves in a bit of a situation where it's basically a timer counting down before we do irreversible damage to our planet. Without further ado, as I'm speaking right now, the world is constantly changing. According to Our World in Data, carbon emissions are the primary driver of climate change, and people are saying that if we don't do anything about it soon, we might be in a position where we don't want to be in. So we must do something to drive these emissions down. Only issue is that there are shared responsibilities between individuals, nations, and regions on this issue, making it a very hot subject in the international community on who's responsible for this. It's important to understand the changes this emissions cause, including habitat loss, entire ecosystem destruction, and global warming. Shifting to the international side of things, China, USA, and India cause about 42.6% of carbon emissions, according to Human Resource Institute. This just goes to show how big of an impact manufacturing and individuals have on the environment. Sticking with the individual aspect this time around, we can look at the United States, where we have a very heavy automotive industry, which in turn helps the gas industry grow, causing even further pollution from both manufacturing and gas usage. It's understanding these symbiotic relationships that cause these kind of chain reactions on emission production, where we can actually look at the solution for this issue. Now, many people say we do have renewable solutions, such as solar, wind, and hydro. This is, in a sense, not true. These sources aren't really efficient enough and are very costly. Part of this is because they have a very low capacity factor. And for those who don't know, capacity factor is the actual output over a period of time versus the theoretical maximum output over a period of time. And according to the Office of Nuclear Energy, wind has about a 35% capacity factor, solar has about 24%, and hydro has about a 45% efficiency. Now, keeping these facts in mind, this efficiency is very low. While compared to nuclear, it is at 92.6% efficiency, which is more massive than any other energy source in the world. Now, before I keep on going on about nuclear, it's important to understand how we actually got here. So, early in human history, we focused much more on either the hunter-gatherer lifestyle or, I would say, low priority farming, where we weren't growing an insane amount or producing an insane amount as we are now. Emissions weren't as high previously in history, and we had much smaller populations, meaning that growth wasn't as necessary in terms of mass production. That being said, starting in the late 18th century, we endured the Industrial Revolution, which at the time many people considered it a huge advancement forward, which is true to a degree. Some people do say it's a double-edged sword, and right now it's a big setback for us. If you look at the emissions that have been released since then, it has led to a lot of damage in our ecosystem, such as coral reefs, even going over to forests, and essentially we are cooking ourselves in an oven. Most scientists do predict that we do have between 20 to 80 years before we face irreversible damage that we can't go back on. Luckily, as I mentioned, we do have nuclear energy. Because according to the Economic World Forum, where they state that about a quarter of low carbon emission electricity is produced by nuclear energy. This is important as if fossil fuels were to produce this energy, it would likely kill a lot of people from air pollution. They say nuclear is safer than solar, it is safer than coal, oil, and gas, and it is safer than most non-renewable energy sources. This is substantially better than what we have right now if we were to switch to nuclear. There's a common misconception that it is very dangerous. This is just clearly not true. Although it is technically a risk, the technology nowadays is much better at reducing the risks from this compared to, let's say, Chernobyl or the Kishtim disaster in Russia, like modern day Russia, formerly Soviet Union. And overall, nuclear energy is the best bang for your buck when it comes to energy sources. As far as what we can do as a society, we can do our best to speak out to our governments locally and state level, and hopefully going to the federal level. My best advice would be to go to your county offices or state representatives, specifically ones who might be like in a Department of Energy, for example, and try and focus on spreading this issue further. That being said, this will likely take time in terms of getting your voice out there and hopefully getting some sort of vote in on nuclear energy. That being said, you can contact www.nei.org for a more direct approach and solution. They are a nuclear advocacy group that do focus on pushing the nuclear solution forward for energy. As this speech comes to a close, I thank you all for listening on this specific issue. We're able to cover nuclear energy as a possible solution for high emissions, hopefully helping climate change. This is an issue that we will see a lot in our lifetime as well as future generations to come. It is up to us to make a change. Will you be part of it?